And we're back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Diary Room, back for another fun episode with another great guest here. Can't wait to get into everything today. Of course, I am Matt alongside Aman. Aman, how are you?
I am swell. Very, very happy to be back for yet another episode of the Diary Room. I've successfully managed to get diary in my brain instead of choir room. So thank you so much for your prayers. I really appreciate it, everybody.
Happy for you, not so much for me. I'm still squeezing some choir rooms in there and trying to get that right.
It's so hard. It's so crazy because like literally we haven't done that consistently in over like what has been like
there's 3 words in the title, the blank room, and we did this to ourselves. I'll say I did this to ourselves because I honed in on the name, and it is what it is. If we say the choir room, we say the choir room. It's okay. Before we get to everything today and bring in our great guest, I cannot wait to talk to this man. Of course, a reminder that the Patreon is up and running. We have a lot of bonus content going over there. We have the losers bracket, so all these people that get eliminated on these main episodes then go into a losers bracket and we find the ultimate loser. That's been fun. Votes for people to come back in based on how you sign up over on Patreon. You get a certain number of votes to then participate in the battle back votes. We have early access to all these fun episodes. Everything is going on there. Patreon.com/the diary room. And other ways to support the podcast are just continuing to leave us 5-star ratings and reviews on the podcast feeds. And if you are not already, subscribe. There's like links, right down there. Subscribe and give us a thumbs up. All those other ways to just continue to, as our guest is pointing down below, to just continue supporting us and keeping the fun rolling here. To keep the fun rolling here today, we have a very, very special guest, another member of the Big Brother Press, back-to-back press weeks here. It is Mike Bloom. Mike, how are you?
Yes, you two didn't realize you were doing your press round, so now I get to come in and call you both out and hold you accountable. I feel like that's the thing I do during these press rounds. No, I'm so excited to be here. Obviously, listen, there was no way to follow up Sharon Tharp, who's just an incredible presence, especially on a podcast. I'm sure I'm the much less acclaimed and anticipated follow-up to that, but happy regardless to appear on the Choiry Room.
Yes, that's good. we can make that happen. I'm sure I'm going to make that happen unintentionally at some point.
Well, that's just transitional. Yeah, like start with the choir room, then go to choiry room, and then drop the cook, keep the D.
I mean, Mike, whoa. You are somebody who has a lot of different podcasts with a lot of different names, but I would say it might be easier for you because, again, the naming mechanic that we used here being such a direct copy is probably shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yes, but there are podcasts where sometimes I will use a very particular sign in and sign out that if I am not in that particular headspace, I might not remember it. Like, for example, at the point this is being released, this whole like big Survivor 50 wish list exodus will have ended. And there were a couple podcasts when admittedly I had just forgotten what I said for like the other 48 podcasts. And so I just kind of rolled into it the way I would a regular podcast, only to go back and do a little bit of ADR and editing magic to realize that it's got to be a little copy and paste. So look, these are the growing pains of a new podcast. And I don't know if you all realize this, but it feels very appropriate as one of the leading experts on Survivor to come in for episode several of this podcast.
Oh my God, Mike, didn't we just do this whole thing?
Oh yeah, I'm Matt. You don't realize that the minute you said that it's something that you are bothered by, the minute I said, "Oh, okay, let's keep digging this hole deeper. Let me bring in the excavator to just dig this hole."
I don't even know why. It's just I don't know. It's like an eye roll, and I'm on camera right now, so the eye rolls are being contained. But Mike
what was his name again?
The one that
exactly.
Justice for Jelinski, because I mean I didn't want to say nothing because he was getting dragged through the mud, but I also used to think that when I was younger.
Oh my gosh!
I will also say Jelinski got into Survivor by way of Big Brother. So if you're looking for someone to book as a future guest on this podcast,
okay,
we will see.
We'll have him on episode several.
I mean,
or several teen.
Mike, that leads into a question that I obviously have to ask you. If there's ever a time that a wheel comes about for Survivor contestants, I do think that you'll be at the helm of that ship after the project you just underwent.
How long would that last? That would last like assuming you did it like once a week or similarly to us. That would last like at least 5 years, right?
Well,
this is gonna last 5 years.
here's the thing: is that I really love this idea that the two of you brought about, and it got to the point where I was like, why didn't I think of doing that with Survivor sooner? So like, listen, if I get like your express permission on recorded info, like there's a chance I might proceed at that ship, turn the ship wheel, if you will, towards risking my vote.
Or we just put Mike on payroll and end up doing it as a
Hey,
bonus
listen,
content.
I'm not mad if the
little
Survivor 50
Monopoly.
wish, yeah, if the Survivor 50 wish list has shown anything, it's that I know way too much about 700 plus contestants across Survivor.
Yes.
So I am game. I am absolutely down. But what you two are doing is so incredibly admirable. I mean, the amount of just passion you have for this show is obviously something that we've known for quite a number of years at this point. And so I love mixing in this random element as well. The wheel, as has been proven in other RHAP podcasts, is just such a spectacle. And especially in these early rounds, it's not unlike the first few weeks of Big Brother, where it's just an absolute shit show, where it's just people coming in of all different qualities. And you hope the cream is sort of going to rise to the top within this years-long first round. And then we really start getting toe-to-toe with like, okay, the inevitable Dan versus Will matchup, who's going to win. But for now, I'm really excited to sift through the like anything goes approach to all these types of contestants.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, you know, we can imagine that those guys and other big names will be there at the end, but the point of the project is to have those conversations along the way. Mike, you missed a couple in the episode you have not seen yet that Sharon had last week, but I mean, honestly, I feel like the Big Brother wheel gods that were trying to prepare our episode, you know, for us, where that was supposed to be for you. It was, you know, a wild group of names that honestly felt like a Mike Bloom group, but we had a lot of fun talking them through with Sharon as well.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, I will say, and I have not had the pleasure of listening to the episode yet, but I have been led in a bit of a peek behind the curtain to look at what happened, and I'm so sorry for the sake of all your homes. I did not realize that at the latter third of the podcast there was a cumulative gas leak in all of your residences, because I'm looking at Jack Owens not getting in over Raven by a unanimous vote, and I have so many questions.
You know, and I'm going to turn to Amon for all your answers.
Look, I tried.
You did not. That was you see him lie directly to all of you, to Mike's face here on this podcast. He said, I tried. First he said, who's Jack? And then he said, Raven, you're going through.
Just for that, Amon's gonna have to be put in his spinning chair and unleashed for like 2 minutes or however long it was when Jack randomly came in during Big Brother 7 and like had to compete in that contest against the house guests.
All right, so what happened
there?
I mean,
like tried to like see if I could come up with anything, and it just wasn't.
So we have to take it a step back. First of all, the first matchup of last week was weird.
Yes. It was really like whoever wins we lose, Alien versus Predator style.
It was funny because there was a comment in one of the I think it was in Scally's episode. There was a comment on YouTube of somebody being like, well, and I was understanding what they were saying. They were like, well, if people are just, you know, that suck as human beings are never going to have a chance to go through, like, why would we just take them all out now? And well, I was like, well, first of all, the next episode has an exact matchup that proves why having people that suck in an episode together, sometimes they have to go through. But also I was like, it was Jackson Mickey against Tiffany. There was no world Jackson was going through. You know, we talked that out and all's well there. But so we get through that one, and then we get to, as you saw, Lawan versus it was Indy, right? And Mike, I don't know what happened. Again, you have to ask Amon, because I think you'll see there, I think that was a 2-1 vote. I was the one.
I mean, I think
it was just the lack of activity with Indy. I mean, and yes, there was something with Lawan there as well, but like at least Lawan gave us something. Indy, like, what do you remember about Indy from BB24? Nothing.
She went out with the punkatard. That's what you got to remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see your case that it's like at least Lawan tried something, even if it was bad, as opposed to Indy did. And there could also be an argument as to, okay, Lawan was on course to do at least pretty well before he has this absolute asinine gesture. And I know that you sometimes also go into the worst case, worst comes to worst, like if we played a season out 100 times, who would do better? And I do think Lawan would probably do better than someone like Indy, who I think is always primed to do pretty well, but is never someone that is necessarily going to excel. It was just maybe a slow descent from like the logical to the fiercely illogical towards the end. But look, these are famous last words, right? Like as a someone who conducts a lot of pregame interviews, I absolutely love when people make these bold declarations of how all these other people were wrong and they're going to be right before something happens. And then by the end, I end up succumbing to this own prophecy.
Yeah. And then, and it just was a little bit, we always factor in a little bit of the person's legacy within the world of Big Brother, what they contributed. It was obviously the only reason why Kaser had a chance in his matchup of, possibly advancing. So that's how Lawan ended up in round 2. And then we end up in the next matchup with Raven versus, I don't even remember. I have to go look.
Jack. It was
Jack.
That's the problem. Nobody remembers Jack.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And we're all looking at each other like, so Jack, huh? And I'm like, okay, I remember Jack was good enough. He did well enough, social enough with all of the things that I can remember about his Big Brother 4 game. But when it gets down to it, we have the opportunity to send Lawan and Raven through in the same episode. And there was cases made about Raven not being as terrible as we might remember.
Okay, I get that. You woke up and chose violence. Listen, I'm all for chaotic picks. It's just wild to see chaos from like a sky perspective, if I'm in a helicopter looking down upon all the madness without the context, it is a little wild, but I cannot wait to listen. And I'm hoping we get more chaos picks. I know that you occasionally ask, like, what are you expecting to see? What are you anticipating to see? For me, I either want like oops all mess, or I really want to shoot for like the middle picks.
Okay.
Because for me, in discussing all these seasons and all these players, especially from a larger scope of things, the best of the best, like, yeah, it's fun to talk about, but honestly, sometimes the discussion wears a bit thin because it's like, oh, they were really good at this and they were really good at that. On the other side, it's very fun to sometimes talk about bad things, whether it be bad movies, bad TV shows, bad seasons, bad players, etc., because there's so much to talk about there, but it doesn't put you in the best headspace. The middle is very fun because there's so much gray area there. It's going to be really a battle of inches of like, all right, this is an okay Big Brother player versus like another okay Big Brother player. And that's where I think really the discussion is going to get fruitful as to, okay, who is really better than who? And not to say this is going to lead to their longevity in this bracket, but it's fun in that, yeah, we've got probably 500 Big Brother players over the course of these 20, nearly 30 seasons. Like, the vast majority of them are just going to be fine.
Yep. And that's kind of what Corey said at the top of this show. He was like, most people are either bad or like just fine at Big Brother. Most people. And then there's like a small 15% of the players that we've ever seen that are actually like masterful at this game. So that really leaves a lot of room for some gray area. So I'm hoping for some gray this episode as well.
Mike, let me take you back to a couple matchups ago. The most recent episode that you probably saw on Scally's episode. Cowboy and Kato Kalin, I believe, was the matchup.
That was the one. Yes, Battle of the Weird Boys. Could you imagine Kato Kalin wearing that lime outfit that Cowboy wore in that one luxury competition where he seemed to wear nothing but the lime? Like, I feel like Kato has that in his closet. When he was living next door to OJ.
That's not in my immediate recall portion of my brain. God. It might be just me protecting myself. But that feels somewhat of what you're describing here, of like this middle versus middle.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Of like, Cowboy is somebody that maybe not a lot of people remember in terms of, yes, he finished in second place, but like people usually regard him as a character and his relationship with Nokomis. But outside of that, there's not much remember to his game versus Kato Kalin, who also was an incredibly wacky character. Never forget Ricky Williams massaging the poop out of him. But if you tuck into their...
Oh my God. I forgot about
But if you remember their games a bit more, like there is stuff that they were both doing in the house respectively that I think is the entire purpose of this podcast as well. With the wish list, it really served as an opportunity to, I think, remind people like, hey, these are what these contestants you might forget about. This is what they were doing during the season. This is their legacy. This is how maybe they deserve a chance back, etc. I feel like this is kind of a way to do that in this podcast as well. Of really tapping into probably the hundreds of Survivor podcasts that of Big Brother players.
Podcast.
Same thing. I did get a text from Lavina right after that episode dropped talking about how many times that she has referenced the Kato Kalin Colin Hurdy line of it all. So, I'm glad that we're bringing up, reminding everybody of memories that we all maybe just pick up and put down from time to time. So yeah, that was that. What else? Mike, I feel like we've been asking from time to time when we remember of just for the audience at home that may obviously, mostly know you from your Survivor coverage. You want to run back down your history of Big Brother fandom?
Oh, yeah, because I am a pretty OG. I'm not as much of a day one as I was with Survivor and The Amazing Race, which I watched pretty much starting in May 2000, and I think it was September 2001 or October 2001, respectively. I hopped on during Big Brother 3. So I'd obviously heard about the show in 2000, and I had heard about the second season or first under the current format, but I had yet to watch it. And then I decided one summer to hop on. I was 13. Yeah, it was summer of 2002. So I was 13. I remember turning into Big Brother 3. And I really enjoyed it from the very first food competition when they're sitting up in a tree with eggs that they were trying not to break. And then like the introduction of the veto and Jerry using it on Marcellus. And then the whole Lori, who's the spokesperson fight. I was like, okay, I could get into this. And I basically haven't stopped watching since. I was not like an active feed watcher since that early age, but I was definitely a follower of Survivor Sucks and Rampant feed updates, whether it be like the Twin Beast attacks over the course of the post-jury of Big Brother 5 and that epic collapse to obviously everything happening in Big Brother 6. That really kind of ramped up my interest in the show. I go back and forth as to what my favorite season of Big Brother is, and I think in my adult life, I've kind of settled into 10. But I did think for a while it was 6 for me, just because of that narrative aspect of there being two big sides of the house going back and forth, and just how personal it ended up getting in so many ways. So, and also that was a season that made me fall in love with the show. Obviously, I have not really missed a beat since, and I've had the great pleasure of getting to cover the show and doing exit press with the contestants since season 19. So for about 7 years now, that also includes coverage of a celebrity Big Brother. So yeah, I've been a fan for over 20 years. And that's what also makes me really excited about this is getting the chance to compare old school cast members with new school cast members. Unlike Survivor, I don't think it feels as apples and oranges of like new school Big Brother throws all these things in. The inherent structure of Big Brother has persisted through 26 seasons. So that makes it, I think, a little bit easier to compare the people from the early aughts to the people from the 2020s.
Yeah. But so much else has changed along the way. So much of the perception of the game, so much of how people play it, so much of how people come into it and whatnot. I'll be interested. We're saying the same thing to Sharon to see if anybody comes up that you have interviewed in some kind of capacity, a preseason capacity, exit interview, to remember specifically maybe what you would talk to them about. I think that would be a lot of fun. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's happened. Well, let's see. You've done Mickey, Kato, Bella, Indy, Raven. So yeah, there's a
Corey.
healthy amount that Corey, Haley. Yeah, so there's a good amount that have shown up in the period of like I like post 18 basically up until now.
The parade period. Parade
period. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which just makes me feel like I wonder if there's another podcast entirely as like what the eras of Big Brother are as well. Like when we feel like things took a specific turn?
The off-season podcast, they just never end.
It's a long off-season.
Winter of Big Brother. Coming this winter. We'll see.
Wababa.
But I think I don't know. We have anything else to get to before we get the wheel going? It's staring me down. It's got a lot of names.
I'm so excited for this wheel because it looks like it's an absolute eyesore. And so I'm just imagining that, Matt, you're no thumb on the scale. Like you could just pull up a random name and this could all be a facade because you can't read any of these names right now.
How long did it take you to get all of those in the wheel?
It's a copy and paste. It takes about like 5 seconds.
Yeah, but I thought it was like, so it's not like a little, you have to enter it in like one by one. You can like do like a whole
what are you doing here?
I was like, how long?
I got a good amount of time to prepare for this kind of stuff, but I don't have that much time. But yeah, no, it's we got
that sounds like something you would do while feeds are down for the umpteen times. Like I copied and pasted hundreds of Big Brother contestants into the wheel.
I'm just saying it would take a long time, but Matt would do it. So
I would do it. That he's not wrong about that. But now that this wheel is staring us all in the face, we can get to clicking it if we're ready.
Yeah, bring me the mess, bring me the mids. Let's do it.
The anticipation, but let's do it. We have all franchises here today. Maybe 1 or 2 seasons might have been plucked out along the way, but otherwise pretty full wheel. So we could get anybody from any which direction. And without further ado,
Oh my
We
god.
do some spins.
Oh my god, it's so full.
Mike's looking for mess. He's looking for chaos.
I'm looking for mess and mids. Those are my 2 themes for today.
Mess and mids. And our first player up of the episode will be
The mess has begun.
Joey Rodriguez from other Joey Rodriguez.
The original, first of his name.
Oh wow.
Space exclamation point exclamation point.
Glenn Garcia.
Garcia, baby.
Yes.
Big Brother 18's own.
18.
From the pre-parade era.
Yes.
Now, yet again, when we talk about the thumb on the scale, I mean, you said you wanted something. You got exactly what you wanted, Mike, with the first pick here.
100%. I mean, this is not a day one boot, but a lot of people count him close to it, right? He's like sort of in the same ballpark as a Jody and a Cameron in that he wasn't voted out or evicted by typical means. Instead, it was basically him losing a series of competitions, both inside and outside of the game.
This is wild.
Yeah. You can see what the Wikia says.
I'm sure it was a lot.
After his team lost the immunity comp and the first 2 rounds of the hit the road comp, they had to compete in a sudden death round as individuals. Glenn finished last, so he was automatically evicted. After the announcement of the battle back comp, Glenn returned to compete against second evictee Jose, but lost, thus placing 16th. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as we're talking about Big Brother 26, perhaps a new era for the show where there are more equitable comps. Maybe poor Glenn could have had that as he was the oldest house guest this season. Though, if I'm remembering correctly, so the one that he lost out on the first time was, as he talked about so many times during, I remember it clear as day, there was a Big Brother live show that RHAP did. And no matter what the question was, it's like they pulled the string on the Glenn Garcia doll and he was like, I'm telling you, those freaking coconuts. If it had gone in one more hole, I would have ran that house.
This man fell out of a coconut tree before it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Now we know the context in which he exists.
Yes.
But Glenn, so I remember it was like they had to sort of do the tilting table to put all the coconuts in the holes. Yeah. And then I feel like the one he lost to Jose was like something with pies, if I'm remembering correctly. Like identify the pie that's poisoned.
Oh, was that the first one? Was that the first competition that was that like led them to? Because the coconut one was the one between his team. That was just him, Corey, Nicole, and Victor. Maybe?
Yeah. That was the one that he lost to get evicted.
Yeah, Tiffany.
Not Victor. But the pies sound familiar as well. Either way, so again, we're talking about a person here who has been in the Big Brother house for somehow 2 days. It's basically the same as, a night one boot or a day one boot. But you look at this man's record, if you're watching on the screen here, obviously no HOH or vetoes, but no times nominated, wasn't even on the block.
Wow.
Just
perfect record.
Perfect record. Another situation where, along with the Jodys and the Camerons of the world and, did not get a chance to play because Big Brother for a long period of time, and it's been a little while, luckily, since we've seen this, decides that, on night one, someone's got to go, or day one, or episode 2, whatever the case is, somebody's got to go and get out of here, and that'll really raise the stakes for the season. And Big Brother 18, we're talking about a season where when this doesn't exactly happen in 19. What happens in 19? No, it does, of course.
Yeah,
Cameron
19, it's not a competition in particular, but basically what they do is like in 19, like 3 people end up on. Oh no, it's that Paul saves half the house. Then the other half of the house does a competition where the like first 3 people to drop out, or like the last 3 people to win the competition, are nominees, which was Christmas, Jillian, and Cameron. And then the house voted to evict one of those 3.
Right. So you talk about someone who did not really get their feet under them in the game whatsoever, really couldn't get their feet under them at all because of this competition.
The coconuts.
Did not go well. Bigger fame of what's gone on after the show. But that's deep lore for Big Brother fans, and that's maybe another podcast. But interestingly enough, Glenn's all around at all these events, is he not? I feel like I see him in pictures on these posters. Amon probably just saw him a couple weeks ago.
He's a tri-state area guy, so he's still hanging around. And so he was the
boogie down Bronx.
Exactly. Yeah, he was a dog groomer, right? Because I remember, didn't Summer of Steve 2018 lie that he was a dog groomer when really he was a cop?
I think so.
I
Yeah.
feel like that
Yeah.
was it. Yeah. And so I remember at the time being like, what are all these older men doing with lying about being dog groomers, or in Glenn's case, telling the truth and maybe lying about other things?
Mm-hmm. I remember specifically one of my preseason memories of Glenn is they were talking like it was one of the interviews that he was doing, maybe with Jeff or something, and he was saying, yeah, like if I need to flirt, I'm gonna flirt with anybody that I can. And like the entirety of BB Twitter was like, who the does he think he's gonna be flirting with? Because like it's just nothing but like 20 somethings in the house, and I think he was married or something at the time, so it's just like, what is going on with this guy?
And then Frank's like, don't worry, bro, I'll take that mantle from you.
Yeah, honestly. So.
Yeah, Glenn was 50 at the time of this competition, by far the oldest in the house. The next oldest person was Tiffany Russo and a couple people at the age of 32. Tiffany, Frank, and James were all 32. So yeah, an 18-year age difference between BB 26, as we're currently watching, has a couple of people on the older side, and the average age is definitely somewhere in the 30s. But I feel like the gap isn't anywhere near that big.
I'm looking at it right now. The Battleback comp consisted of Jose and him having to run along like these little balance beam logs to collect balls to put into some slots.
Yeah, so I think that Glenn probably unfortunately did not benefit from the fact that these were some individual competitions. Because if I remember, like one of the ones that his team lost was just like building a 3D puzzle, basically. So like if he had gotten that, I don't know. Listen, I don't think Glenn Garcia is necessarily a mental giant in the way that Alicia from Co-Wrong is, but like he would have at least had maybe a bit of a better chance than two balanced competitions.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's so hard with these first boots. I mean, he definitely seemed to come into the house with like a little bit of initiative, more so than some of the other players because there were quite a few people that didn't really quite understand the game on his cast, and quite a few people that were sort of just willing to just like let the game play them. So yeah, I mean, I think it's not a bad shout to say that if he were to ever return, that he might, assuming he doesn't get screwed over with a competition, he might do well. I still feel like he's kind of a pre-jury kind of person, but you never know.
I mean, just imagine the sliding doors universe where he wins that competition, because if you remember, it was down to him and Corey Brooks. And just think of what the Big Brother 18 would look like, what the X on the Beach world would have looked like. Maybe the face of reality TV would have changed in general. Does Nicole come back and on Big Brother 22? Does she win reindeer games? Who's to say?
Is she married to Victor? Corey's about to be a new daddy, announced recently.
Yeah,
so
does she even
all
win
these sliding
Big Brother
doors.
18 without Corey being there? I don't know.
Crazy stuff. What else is there to say about Glenn? I mean, of course, we'll see who he gets matched up against, but
yeah, we've been talking for like 15 minutes about Glenn. That is more than the cumulative time he spent on Big Brother 18.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you want to get into that thought process of what would I can't even speak. What would it have been like if he had been in the house a little bit longer? Amon was saying maybe he, makes it. Did you say maybe he makes it a little bit far? I don't see a world where he makes it out of the pre-jury ever. Honestly.
I'm having a hard time seeing him at a pre-jury, but I do think that he definitely. I don't think that he's first boot. I think that with this particular cast, I think that there were some people that they wanted out before Glenn. Glenn just got the shit end of the stick.
No, well, especially because especially in that era of Big Brother, it was really about, especially with these first couple of HOHs, like, okay, nominate the people that stick out, and there are people that stick out from a behavioral perspective. See that from someone like Jose, who just like thought his shit didn't stink. Or there's people from a demographic perspective that stick out. And I think that's also one reason why, with a couple of exceptions, you almost always see like the older house guests end up some of the first nominees.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us find out.
Oh, yes. Joey Rodriguez.
Yes. Imagine, like,
no, I'm upset now. I just forgot that I was hoping that Glenn would make it until the end of Big Brother 26 to come up, and we would get to Joey versus Joey, and now we can't do that. Oh, that's horrible.
All right, well, you can stuff the ballot box for the battle back.
Yeah.
It only makes sense that Glenn gets a second chance at a second chance in the battle back.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's not going to be Joey versus Joey, but it will be Glenn Garcia versus
Let's see.
Who is it?
Memphis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Two sides of the same coin, if you will.
You wanted a battle of the mids, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, Memphis, at least I think going into Big Brother 22, I think there were a good amount of people that did think Memphis was a bit underrated. That, like, there was certainly an argument I saw in some circles that, like, Memphis does pretty well against pretty much any other person sitting next to him besides arguably the GOAT in Dan Giesling.
So then he comes back, of course. Well, actually, let me let him on read the the bio before we get too far away.
Holy
from,
shit,
introducing
143
him.
days. My
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, the wiki doesn't really have too much.
Wait, how
for
wild
him
is
in
it
terms
that
of
right now it's
BB10.
1:43 p.m. Just saying.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's Memphis
And
time.
That's weird.
It's
That's
Memphis
weird.
time.
We call this the Memphis Minute.
That's weird. All right, sorry, Amon.
In BB10, he was a member of the Renegades and made it to the final two, but lost to Dan in a unanimous 7-0 vote, becoming first to receive 0 jury votes to win in North American BB history. In BB22, Memphis began by forming a final two with Cody and becoming the creator of the dominant The Committee Alliance. He was a calm threat, winning 3 HOHs and 1 POV at the final 5. Committee ally Nicole nominated him alongside Christmas. He was evicted in unanimous 2-0 vote. He finished in 5th place. He can sometimes be petty and rude, especially towards David, whom he had a massive running feud with.
Wait, they wrote that in there?
Yes. Yes. I was like, wait, is this Matt? Okay. He had a massive running feud with, as he believed that he was the rookie of the house. He also had unwanted clashes with Tyler.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
That's one of the things that I remember the most about that alliance, besides the fact that they were like boring to watch because they were so dominant and whatnot. It was the fact that there were so many different like power players, you could say, within that group. Like you had Cody Calafiore, who is, seen as one of the best people to never win and was on track to do very well. Danny Donato, a very strong player, advanced around 2 here already. Memphis, a guy who's been a runner-up. Tyler Crispin, one of like truly the top of the list of greatest to never win type deal. So when all of these people come together and they're working together, you're like, well, someone has to lose. Someone, like, only one of these people will win. Maybe one of these people will end up as a runner-up, most likely next to them. Nicole Franzel, hello, like all of these strong players that are working together. And it got to a certain point for me watching this play out where I was getting so annoyed with them. Of course, like I'm annoyed that Davon's gone, a sentiment shared by this panel, I'm sure. Bailey, obviously pre-jury, like, we're seeing this group dominate all the way to the end. And I'm like, but at least, a lot of them will have to lose along the way. There's no way that they all can make it to the end.
Well, at least when it gets down to the committee, it'll get really spicy and they'll take each other out. And like, I think we've seen between that and the cookout, just from a Big Brother perspective, we very rarely get that, Survivor South Pacific spiciness of like, okay, it's just down to the dominant alliance. What will they do? Because basically we saw during the triple, right, that like Tyler and Christmas try to make a move. It doesn't work. And then it pretty much is that alliance of Cody, Enzo, and Nicole. Cody chooses to like basically pick them, considering he had his pick of the litter, and decides to take out all the other threats, which was Tyler, Memphis, and Christmas in that order.
Yeah.
Big Brother 22, my memories of Memphis are just revolve so much around him waking up before everybody else, sitting in the kitchen alone every morning, having his coffee, not really talking to anybody, didn't even bother Cam talking. All of his meetings with the HOH were like he didn't even want anybody in his HOH room that first night, which, is fine or whatever, but he would go to bed very early. It was just so dull. It was like watching somebody in a retirement home, to be honest. Like
I remember like I had a joking theory at the time that I thought Memphis was actually like Jerry reincarnated, like he wore a Memphis suit, because he had like the big scarves. Again, he was really grumpy with this sort of like get to step in rookie attitude where he wins HOH in week 2, and like it's pretty dang rude to David's face, and then doesn't really relent for the rest of the season. And maybe it's more so speaking to just the attitude of Big Brother 22 that he seemed to be like one of the many people that like didn't really want to be there. But I will say, coming in, like I was really excited for it because, as I mentioned before, Big Brother 10 is my favorite season. And Memphis is a really interesting part of that. Because again, I think we focus so much on either the workings of Dan or just like the chaos that all of the women brought, or even like just what an irascible character Jerry was. But Memphis was someone who was really interesting because, and again, that initial pre-jury structure was pretty much everyone ganging up on this initial Brian-led alliance of him, Steven, Angie, Dan, and Memphis. And Dan was able to kind of like weasel his way into the majority after being nominated week 2. But Memphis was someone that almost went home against Jesse, that he was specifically nominated that week. as the boot, as someone that either they felt threatened by or someone that they didn't get along with. Don't call him a womanizer, because Memphis will stand up and say, "Are you out of your mind, old man?"
Are you out of your mind, old man?
But due to the America's player twist that happens that week, Dan is able to get the votes to keep Memphis, which causes such a schism in the house and honestly some of the best drama we've ever seen in Big Brother. And I feel like he was like an okay player from then on out on the surface. He ends up winning like 3 vetoes, I think, in that season, if my math is correct. He doesn't win HOH, but like he was pretty good at competitions. But when it came down to it in the end, I think it was just a matter of like, nobody really respected him. I think from a social perspective and a personal perspective, either they had better relationships with Dan or that they just did not necessarily like the way that he was conducting himself around the house. What's interesting is, if I'm remembering correctly, by the tail end of Big Brother 22, when he was evicted, he was looked at by fans as probably like the second biggest threat to win besides Cody.
I mean, it was coming down to it, especially once Tyler's gone, because so he ends up in, I think Tyler was 6th place.
He was,
goes
yeah.
out, right before Memphis. And then, you're looking at a point where it's like, okay, of the players left, it's probably not Enzo. It could be Nicole, probably not Christmas. So it's like, is Memphis or Cody going to take it all the way to the end? And Memphis gets cut. So I, think that was definitely something people were discussing. It's interesting so much with Memphis, because he's somebody who, by most accounts, wasn't supposed to be a 2-time player. He was the one very much rumored to be the replacement of Josh, along with Keisha being the replacement of Casey. And
I am so upset about it.
I was gonna say we could get him ramped up. I don't know, maybe.
And just think, I gotta get another sliding door, because Memphis ends up meeting Christmas in the Big Brother house. Maybe one of the most out of nowhere showmances, until it was followed up by Derek X and Claire the next season. And then it leads to obviously some not so great circumstances for the two of them as of late as well.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that they're still together. To put it that way, at least. And what was their thing in the house? Like, I feel like they would be like, we have to do laundry or something like that. It was some kind of code word that like they would use, and people were like, what are they talking about? And it kind of became clear as the season went on. It was like, oh, these two were like into each other, but like they didn't do anything in the house as far as we saw.
I stand by it that they kissed each other in the dark in the back bedroom that night. And I got so much flack for it when I tweeted it out. And then literally, lo and behold, a month after the show concludes, they're like, we're dating, we're gonna get engaged. I was like, I told y'all they were kidding.
Amon, of course, the biggest he was there for them since the very beginning. This the staunchest supporter of Memphis and Christmas.
Yeah, I mean,
both
look,
of their 2 sons, one named Loyal and one named River. I was just like, what is going on here?
Josh and Casey have no idea what they did by not being able to compete on this season.
They ruined the season. I should have told him that to his face when I saw him 2 weeks ago.
Josh, of all the things to talk about.
He would have given you a beatdown like Memphis did to those people outside of his bar that one time.
Oh, man. But yeah, no, what I was saying was just the fact that, he kind of exists in this. I wouldn't say his reputation, at least to my awareness, was like at the same level of what Cody had after his BB16, where people were looking at him of like, oh, like he played so well, but then at the end fumbles and, ends up in the final 2 with the wrong person. I would say he played very solidly throughout BB10. And when you get down to that final vote, like Mike was just saying, it's Dan versus Memphis. Of course, we know how that all plays out and why that all plays out that way. But it is, somebody that if he had not come back, I think the conversation would be had for years to come of like what would happen if Memphis got to play again. So interesting that we did get to see it again, and interesting that we did get to see it again, albeit being a very boring way that this alliance conducted the game on their end of things. We did see him competing with other very powerful Big Brother players, and he made a very valiant effort going all the way to the end. I mean, by no means do I think anybody could really argue that Memphis is not a decently good Big Brother player, but even if he had gotten to the end there, I could imagine a world where he ends up in a similar scenario to how people viewed him in BB10 of like, well, good for you, but like you're still kind of not my best friend. Look at what happened with David.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you ask Julie Chen Moonves, though, he might have been one of the best players in the house. Do you remember when the people were evicted pre-jury and Julie Chen Moonves would show them the screen of the committee? Like, what you don't realize is Memphis engineered your ouster. He put together this alliance when, like, really, and maybe people can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the prevailing narrative on the committee was like, they eventually solidified this as the main alliance because they all kept winning the competitions. Like, if I
Exactly.
remember the first couple weeks when there was so much hope in our eyes for Big Brother 22, it's that, like, Memphis put this together during his HOH week, but a lot of the people had so many other connections. Hell, Cody's going to take one to the end in the form of Enzo that I don't know if anybody relied on it as, like, their number one alliance until all of them just kept winning. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to be the one to turn on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It felt like he did all the work in the beginning to get people together, and then he literally and figuratively sort of like went to sleep for most of the season. And like when he won his HOHs, it was like, well, we know what to do. They're not in the alliance. Let's put them up and then move on to the next one. And no one's gonna come after me yet because you don't want to break the committee alliance yet. So it's just like, it makes sense for like your game. And, you know, he admittedly said that he talked to Dan before going in. And I'm sure Dan, who, you know, keeps tabs on the show, knows what the prevailing strategy of modern day Big Brother is. Starting the big alliance.
I don't know. I think he's more so interested in Love Island nowadays than Big Brother.
Yeah, I saw that tweet the other day. I was like, what's going on over there? I have to check in and see if everything's all right. But I think I just think while it's, you know, I struggle with even using the word impressive because getting a big alliance together, that within itself isn't necessarily hard. It's the keeping it together that's hard. And I don't think that he really did much in keeping them together socially as much as he did just like physically in winning 3 HOHs. You know what I mean? And that's still a viable way to play. But I don't think that he really had any like strong connections that would be willing to keep, like, you know, he's one of the first out when it got down to the nitty gritty. So it's like, and that's because you don't really talk to anybody. And the ones that you are talking to, you're talking down to.
It's the relationships outside of the committee, you know, specifically speaking to BB22, that like really left me with so many questions. You obviously have the David of it all, as you know, has been mentioned. It's like he just didn't even try. He didn't even try to make this guy feel like he liked him. Like maybe, you know, over the course of the season, they'd probably have a couple of conversations that were like not terrible, but for the most part, it was like he looked at David like he was completely just a non-player in the house, like was not important. And had David won an HOH,
like you were
Memphis
on the show like 15 years ago, like
it's literally like the, you know, come on, Grandma, let's get you to bed, but Grandpa. But then also the relationships that he was contending with at the beginning of the season with the Janelle and Kaser of it all, like watching him navigate through all of that, I was like, this is a test of how somebody, you know, figures out their Big Brother game, you know, having him coming in with these people that he knew, obviously Keisha as well. And she ends up being completely removed, you know, right off the bat.
He didn't
but
even
then
care to really even try to stop that from happening. And
no,
Janelle coming up to him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was one where I was like, oh yeah, we haven't talked in a while. Like, I don't really got any allegiance to her.
Right. Yeah. So between all three of these people, the old school players that he came in with, and he's like, okay, well, I have this other group that very much is, you know, I'm a part of. I'm working towards building something here with Cody, with everybody over here. I don't know. I guess it speaks to the fact that he was just in such a good spot that he had the options. But I don't know. It's interesting to think about a world where he finds a way to get one or multiple of those people a little bit further in the game and really have all the options going down to the end. I mean, if he can slide like a Tyler off the board even earlier and have Janelle and Kaser versus Cody happening while Memphis is squarely in the middle, like,
right.
Perfect.
Right. I think that could have gotten him a little further than he did get, because he, you know, Janelle was actively coming to him multiple times saying
him. There was nobody else.
Like, you just realized this is you. I got my wish. This is somebody that I interviewed because I remember that I did Big Brother 22 exit press.
Any strong memories of his takeaways outside of I like Christmas.
Yeah, I
really like Christmas.
I'm gonna look it up. Maybe he was just speaking about the holiday season because it did film pretty late. It was one of those fall seasons.
Holiday season, you don't say.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. He called Christmas intense. He called Cody full of shit. He called Enzo a man-child, and he called Nicole the best. And actually, I remember this, right? Because then there was some discussion in the moment of like, oh, wait a minute. Could Nicole actually win if she gets to the final 2 here? I remember like clear as day, very specifically, that because of that answer from Memphis, people were starting to suspect that maybe a Cody Nicole final 2 could be closer than we thought.
Look, I would have not minded seeing it, but what we got instead of that final 2 was a lot more enjoyable television. At the expense of one Nicole.
You already brought up the you've already brought up the wheel, so I assume that we
Yeah, I'm gonna do what unfortunately has not been done in Big Brother history yet, and I will vote to evict Glenn Garcia.
There we go.
Right. I am also going to evict Glenn Garcia.
3-0.
I saw
Glenn
Glenn maybe on the
Joey.
feed. BB-18 was the first season that I actually sat and like intensely watched feeds, and I probably saw him like maybe for 10 minutes.
Well, I
He
don't
was
think
at the-
I don't think you ever saw him though, right? Because like, wouldn't the feeds? Because it wasn't a live movie.
Yeah,
and he left. And he left on day
so
two.
maybe I'm conflating it with him sitting at there's a scene where he's at the dining table for like 2 seconds, and then you never see him again until he leaves.
Yeah, maybe if it was like a flashback back when those existed to day two. Because yeah, he left on day two, and typically before 22, when we did the live move-ins, they typically have like 3 days.
Yeah, they'd be in there for a bit.
Yeah, before they officially
So
start.
they probably did have dinner on day 1. So Amon, you're probably not making up this scene that you have in your memory.
He was at the dinner table and he was talking to somebody, and I was like, that is the last time I ever saw him. And then he was gone.
Well, unfortunately for Glenn, he's gone again. Out of this bracket here, losing in this matchup.
But I feel good about him in the losers bracket.
I think we got to figure it out, because I want the Joey. I want it, but it's not going to happen.
At least
today.
do a bracket of who he should totally hook up with.
Okay, let's spin the wheel and find that out. Who's coming up?
That's what Amon said about Memphis and Christmas. They should totally hook up.
Oh my, Mike. Oh my god.
The next player up here in this episode of the Diary Room is going to be Tonya.
Tonya Paoni.
Tonya.
Now,
we got an old schooler.
I've made it a very. Is this BB3?
This is the second boot of BB3, Tonya, if I'm remembering correctly.
I've made it very like intentional that I don't put the season here, because if I don't know immediately what season this person is from, that's part of the fun to me. But luckily you guys knew. So okay, I remember Tonya, just kind of forgot where she fell into place. Anyway,
Tonya started the game in a strong position, using her close relationships with Kiara and Lisa to replace Jerry in the dominant cartel alliance. After joining her alliance and voting out Lori, Tanya's game would begin to crumble after outsider Marcellus won HOH. Tanya's weak relationship with Marcellus landed her on the block as a pawn against Josh.
Yeah.
Tonya felt safe and made no moves to campaign against Josh, while Josh went on a big campaign. Tonya got into a public argument with Amy and Marcellus, which led to the house believing that the confrontation showed her true color. Tanya's passiveness, along with her tarnished reputation, led to her being evicted by a vote of 5-3.
And if I remember correctly, they did a battle back that season amongst the first 4 boots. And Tonya got immediately taken out of the running, because I think there was a question of like, how many days out of the remaining however many would you only eat peanut butter and jelly? And she was the only one not to answer all of them.
Yes.
So her lack of taste in peanut butter and jelly was like one of the things that made sure she didn't get back in the house.
Which is wild. I mean, like, well, I guess like especially early on in the days of reality television, you don't know the answer to that. Make sure that answer is all of them. But yeah, she was friends with the Kiara and like the stereotypical hot people side of the house, and just kind of existed in that world. Like you said, she was on the block against Josh, right?
She was, yeah.
Yes.
Up against alternate universe Rob Cesternino and Josh.
Yes. So, I mean, there's that. You end up on the block against somebody who's actually there to play Big Brother, and, play it strategically as best as they possibly can. It was not going to end well for Tonya there, but impact on Big Brother as a whole, I mean, unless, maybe Mike, if you can speak to it more as somebody who was watching it live at the time, when's the last time anyone has said Tanya's name out loud?
When she was arrested for reckless homicide in 2010.
Wait, what?
Yeah. I thought there was something about Tonya in the news that I couldn't put my finger on, and then I just looked it up, and yeah, she was arrested in 2010 because she was drunk driving and got into a car accident. I believe a couple people died in the process.
Jeez Louise. Well, okay.
There's that.
Say the judgment call on that one is kind of
so that's, I mean, unfortunately that is I wouldn't even say that's like her legacy, because again, she is kind of a more forgettable character, second boot from an early season that it's all sort of forgettable, unfortunately, at the end of the day. But the one thing I only remembered was the peanut butter and jelly. I don't even remember like the argument she got in with Amy and Marcellus that had everyone showing her true colors.
I'm trying to remember it now too. I'm trying to like scan through the summary to see what it was about because I can't remember either. I binged watched this season. The only thing that kept distracting me the entire time was the fact that what's his face looks so much like Rob, and I was just like,
Josh,
and then
yeah.
Rob went on to tell me that Josh took his place. I was like, wow. So they just literally found your clone and put him on the show. It's crazy.
I mean, it was like, looking for this very specific, like, nerdy reality TV fan from Long Island, New York. And they had one, they replaced him with another.
I will say as a follow-up, apparently it was later discovered after the incident with Tonya that there was no drugs or alcohol in her system and all charges were dropped. So still a very sad situation involving Tonya, but not as much of a morose ending maybe as it seemed initially.
Wow.
Right.
Not a great ending in the game either, as again ends up the second person evicted from the season with very minimal impact on the season as a whole, on the players, does not get voted back in when the opportunity arose. I mean, look, you're up. Granted, she took herself out of the running there by that question, as Mike is reminding us, but like, imagine if she had gotten down to the final two that were eligible to be voted in, it would have been either her versus Amy or her versus Eric. Those were the two that did get voted on. And I don't see a world where she gets the votes in there. I mean, you have like maybe Kiara. That
I think she would have been the pawn once again.
Again, like Kiara was, I remember them being buddies, so maybe that's a vote on her side. And I don't know if Roddy goes along with that as well. But like, if Eric couldn't even get back in, I mean, Amy obviously, had the connections. I don't know. I can't see a world where she does well even upon returning in that spot. As far as we're aware, has not been in consideration to come back anytime after that. Of course, it would not be after all of what Mike was just bringing up goes down. So, look, there's Tonya.
They brought Christmas back, so why not?
Was that before?
Yeah, that was in between.
That was before, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But that's the other thing as well, is that with Tonya, I mean, I think people usually attribute previously aforementioned house guest Michelle from BB4 as like the first example of pawns go home. I guess Tonya technically counts, but this is less so like, oh, everyone in the house pulls a coup on the HOH and gets rid of the pawn, and more so like Tonya kind of digs her own grave by not campaigning and getting in a fight with a couple people in the house.
And self-admittedly, she admits to it too, like actually not doing anything to make it happen. I do think that it is like sort of like a little bit of like self-arrogance where you just feel like, look at me.
Well, especially after what happened with Lori the last week, I would imagine if her thinking is, okay, well, the most confrontational person gets eliminated, people don't like Josh, so he's probably going to get taken out over me.
Right. Yep.
With somebody so like, so little to say about them, I'm like looking at her bio on the Big Brother wiki. What is how does she plan to win Big Brother? Obviously did not go through with this. I'll probably lay low for a while, not be too strong a player. There we go. Or too weak. Use my sex appeal with the men and get on the good side of the women. I'm also a wonderful cook.
It was about alcohol. That's what the issue was. Amy was trying to take other people's alcohol. And that pissed off Tonya, and so they all got into it.
Wow, that feels on brand for both Tonya and Amy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you forget that these people age as time goes on because we haven't thought about them in so long. Tanya's now 57.
Wow. And I think she changed her. I think she got remarried. I think her name is like Tonya Casper. Not the mattress.
According to the wiki, this might be her current name. I think Casper may have been her previous last name. Who's to say? There's Tonya.
All right.
What else can we reminisce on?
All right,
Tonya
so I'm intrigued. Will we get another matchup of like random first couple of boots versus a finalist or someone that goes far in multiple seasons?
I gotta say, really hoping for some BB Ken to get back in here. We had a lot of BB Ken on AJ's episode, and they've been just kind of like lurking in the background, waiting for us to pick off all these other BBUSers.
You had Shanae a couple episodes ago with Scally.
Yeah,
I know, but I thought we should have had more. I mean, then again, some of our guests haven't been, Big Brother Canada heavy yet, so that's taking up spots.
And we had Tashawn, but like I'm looking for like more like big names. Like we've had so many big names from BBUS. I'm like,
I need to see Tonya face off against Ika.
Let's do it. Like, come on, we can pull Ika out of here. Let's find out. Spin the wheel for Tanya's matchup. This could either go all over the place. I have no idea where this is going to go. Will it be BB Can?
All right.
It is not BB Ken.
It's Jasmine.
BB24. We're back in the BB24 mix with Jasmine. What's the food? The butter.
Blindside butterbean.
Blindside butterbeans.
Butterbean.
We're talking from fights over alcohol to fights over missing muffins.
Who ate the half?
Oh
She
my
was true
god!
camp with her little
I
snacking
mean,
around the house.
This is
She had
great.
those muffins.
We're 2 out of 4 on mess so far because Jasmine is. I mean, it's so interesting to view like how the perception of Jasmine varied over the course of Big Brother 24, where I do think she was sort of labeled as one of the most vocal haters against Taylor. She will be one of the people who wins HOH in week 2 and does nominate Taylor, but does pursue this plan that comes together to blindside Pooch as he goes on the block. But then I think by the end, it's a little bit of a Raven symptom where I think Jasmine was just such a wackadoo person that everyone was kind of on board with that concept by the end. And she does eventually go through and vote for Taylor to win. But what an absolutely ridiculous human in the best way possible. I mean, like, can we just remember that week 1 eviction show where first off, we get everything with Paloma after the feeds had been blacked out and we had no idea what happened. And then we had, of course, Julie Chen Moonves' iconic Godspeed Paloma said with her full chest. And then it's like, okay, we're done with the backstage stuff. Taylor's safe. At least we can now move forward with the normalcy of the HOH competition. And then halfway through it, Jasmine takes one wrong step getting off a spinning guitar and is lying there in pain. And Julie Chen Moonves is like, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
It was we had 2 heaping servings of Taylor's karma in one episode. Paloma being gone, and then her blasting her ankle. It was just you couldn't wish for anything better. I loved the whole thing.
Didn't expect to have 2 people that are not Christmas relate back to Christmas in one episode, but there was a lot of talks about, what happened with Christmas.
We're in the heat of summer, but Christmas is right around the corner.
Yeah. Is Jasmine going to be taken, to get medical attention, which she was, but she wasn't taken, I don't think, as far away from the house
they made the house guests do it. Let's be honest.
Yeah. it seemed like she got some treatment, right there on the spot. And but she did have a scooter, right?
Yes, she had she had a scooter and but I do remember the moment of who ate the half was her on crutches because I don't believe she could go up the HOH stairs, obviously, with the scooter.
But it was, it was too close from BB19 to this that it was like, oh, not again.
Who did she have bringing her breakfast? And then she asked them to take it back down because it was something on it that she didn't like. I forget who it was. I was like, are you kidding me? When she was like when she moved out of the HOH room and I guess she couldn't snack as probably anymore. So she had it was like one night that she went back in the kitchen, took the whole jar of pickles and brought it back to her bed with her. I was like,
but then there was but then there was like her maladies didn't end there because remember one of the first Festy Bestie vetoes was like the classic one where somebody runs and the other person's like bungee corded to them and gets hoisted in the air and like Jasmine passes out in the middle of it as she's like hanging there.
The famous gift.
She was such a big character for sure. The DRs definitely were capturing a different side of Jasmine than we were seeing, I would say, in the house. Every time that she popped into the DR and she was being her louder, more Southern self, that people were like, where did this come from? I wasn't mad about it. I thought she was a very fun DR personality. I know it comes across to some people like, this isn't you. You're putting on something for the camera. I'm like, okay, but I understand also some people know that they're making a television show and they amp it up a little bit. So I can appreciate that for the most part.
I mean, yeah, she was definitely game to play in the DR with production for sure.
So I like that. But then everything with her and Taylor, with everybody and Taylor, like that season, when you talk about anybody from that season, it's like, well, what was their role within the world of Taylor Hale? And that's how it should be when you talk about that season, but some for better, some for worse, unfortunately. Jasmine definitely right on that line of some for better, some for worse, because as you guys were talking about, she was a part of some of that stuff early on, immediately not immediately, but like over the course of the season kind of connects with Taylor in a way of like, okay, we're really not going to target each other if we can avoid it. All the way down to her voting for Taylor to win.
Yeah, she did say in my exit interview with her that she did did regret not standing up for her sooner because she says that when she was outside of the house, I'm that person who always stands up for someone when they can't stand up for themselves. And so in the later weeks, especially in this last week, I was able to really get to know Taylor on a different level. And I just respect her so much. I wanted her to know that that was my biggest regret in the house, because we should all be able to lean on each other in that house, and especially have people that can have each other's back when we feel down or when somebody is attacking us. And I will say, for someone who, again, was such a big character, had a little bit of a whimper of an exit, where they did, of course, Direfest and the split house. And I think it was just a manner of like,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure she was the only non-leftover inside,
Exactly.
right? It was like, it was Michael, Brittany, Monty, Taylor, and her. And like,
Taylor wasn't happy to have to vote her out.
Yeah, and Michael had like led her to believe that she was the pawn against Monty, but at that point, the 5 swatters or whatever they called the girls had all kind of been on the ropes, and so it was just obviously the less to do boot of that double boot.
Yeah, she I feel like has popped up on posters as well of being at events and whatnot. I feel like she's been kind of keeping herself in the picture, and honestly,
she
I
was
feel
there
like
at
was she?
Oz's.
Okay,
she was there.
When you look at a world where BB22 happened, and now we're kind of rebuilding new faces of the show, and maybe not as big of faces. Like there's a lot, there's just scale. Taylor being like a face of the show, and other people that are just big characters that are memorable from these seasons. I could absolutely see a world if another somewhat of an all-star season of returning players pops up in the next couple of years, unless too much time passes, where Jasmine could pop up back up on our screens in some way.
I mean, I remember feeling a lot better about her as the season was coming closer to an end. I mean, it was harder, obviously with all the stuff that was going on with Taylor, and I kind of just like lumped her in with the rest of that. But she did sort of seem to like come down a little bit and just be a little bit more relatable. And I enjoyed her a lot more throughout the season, and I was kind of sad to see her go, at least in the way that it happened with the whole split house twist. So I think that there's definitely a world in which she comes back and does better, because I think that she is naturally gifted at making friends and being sociable within the house. I think that she has a lot of eccentricities, but I think that there's also just a piece of her, like there's only a few people that would, I feel like most people, when it comes to eccentricities that someone like Jasmine has, they'll just be like, that's just Jasmine. There's only one person in the house, in Turner, that'd be like, no, I'm not dealing with this, and we'll like give it back to her. But I feel like most people are just like, just let her have it.
Yeah, I am wondering, had the split house twist not happened, if she would have been like, let's say, I don't know actually if Michael or Terrence finished first. So like maybe that would be a world of difference. But like, which one out of the outsiders would have been the next to go out of Jasmine or Alyssa? I mean, I would have imagined a situation from Jasmine of like, well, we could keep her around because like physically she's not going to be able to compete in like half of these competitions. So that makes her much less likely of a threat. I do again think it was just sort of the bad hand that was dealt, though I do believe Michael picks her first for that reason, as like an opponent that you could easily serve up here. I mean, I could have seen a world like if 25 was a returnee season, I could have seen her possibly get picked in sort of like, this is an odd comparison, but the Chicken George mold of like, here's a big character that would be fun to see again for comic purposes. I mean, listen, suffice it to say, she's going to beat the pants off of Tonya in this matchup, but I don't know if even a couple of years removed from Big Brother 24, if she is looked at as one of the biggest people to bring back from that season.
Well, I think it's definitely the personality, like you just mentioned. I mean, James Hewling type vibes of just like, a character that gets brought back, not necessarily because of gameplay. But I could easily see also a world where like, despite the fact that James is out here ruining every blindside that's available, like I played the game a little bit more. I would say you could argue in his second season, goes farther in his second season, and I'm not making a 1-to-1 comparison, but like I could see the same for Jasmine. I could see her, having learned a decent amount from her first season. Working more on bonds, because she wasn't terrible by any means. She had people that liked her. She was outside of that, alliance that ultimately carried the day there. But I definitely feel like there's, like you said, she's going to blow the pants out of Tonya here in this competition. But like, even if this was a tougher matchup, if it was like somebody that was almost an equivalent of a Jasmine as far as gameplay goes, I could still see her advancing. There's not that much like
so
obvious
Jasmine
downside.
versus Raven then.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think it's a good comparison in terms of, I think people kind of measure them on the same scale of, for lack of a better term, delusion during their time in the house.
I'm going Jasmine.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that she's definitely not as delusional as Raven. But I wonder if that makes her even more of a threat. So does she survive as long as Raven does? You know?
I also realized as I'm bringing back my interview that she did call Kyle one of the worst players in the game at the time she was evicted.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I'd forgotten though even what was happening at the time that made her feel that way. Maybe it was just the fact that like they were not in a good relationship at the time she was evicted.
yeah.
yeah,
Huh.
I think so.
Indie coming up.
We
Follow.
didn't even need to read her wiki.
Oh, we didn't do it.
We didn't need to.
I mean, her
but,
reputation speaks for itself. Have you read any
yeah.
about like anybody from 24 or 25? Is this the first person from 24 or
No,
25?
Indie just came up.
Oh, Indy just
Yeah,
came up,
Indy.
and you
Yeah.
had Corey as well. So
So we've gotten in, into the very recent players, but yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, it's fair enough. We remember. Again, for better or for worse. So, all right, official votes. If we didn't do that part yet, Jasmine
I'm
versus
happy to vote
Tonya.
Jasmine through and all of her TikTok real weirdness, and her blindside butter beans and her bucket of pickles. I'm here for it.
yeah,
And the muffin, of
I
course.
hope that she brings a different outfit for round 2, much like that infamous TikTok where she changes outfits iconically. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote to evict Tonya here.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tonya has received 3 votes to evict. That is enough. Jasmine will be advancing. Now it'll be very funny if Turner gets a matchup like Turner versus, Dan Will type deal, and Jasmine advances while Turner doesn't. That would be something.
The true festy besties.
Yeah. But in the meantime, let's find out. We have 1 matchup left in this episode. Mike, I told you I'm manifesting some BB Can to pop up here. I mean, you have 2 players left in this episode. You'll be back at some point, but for now, any calls you want to throw out there?
I'm hoping for some BB Can. I'm hoping for some messy. I mean, I guess Jasmine is a bit of a messy player that made it further, but I want a pretty even matchup here.
Okay. Let's see. Let's spin this wheel.
We
had Memphis as far as like somebody that a deep run player.
Yeah,
we
deep
had
run player that I think
Tonya in
gets
an early
talked about. I
boot
mean, the
spot.
Renegades is regarded as one of the better alliances in BB history.
All right, well, let's see who's next.
Alternate universe, Glenn Garcia.
Corey Brooks. I think I need to shuffle this wheel. I mean, it's already shuffled. I shuffled it like 3 times. But Corey Brooks, BB18 comes up here.
Yeah.
Feeling bad about my BB Can chances here, but what are you gonna do?
No, this is going to be a really interesting one. I think this is like almost what I was asking about, because again, maybe we'll get like another pre-jury, shutout case for Corey. But Corey's this interesting case where maybe on the surface you're like, he brought absolutely nothing besides. I guess we're 3 for 3 on love of Christmas because he also has a love for the holiday.
Gosh.
But
what an episode. We have to hold this episode till the holidays. I'm sorry, Mike. We'll
Yeah,
talk
it's
about
alright.
it in a couple months.
But I do think that it'll be interesting to talk about the fact that if I recall correctly, like I think people were saying at the time that if something goes right with that final 4 and he ends up surviving to the final 3, there's a chance that he might win the season.
Oh, I absolutely think he's the winner. If, he wins the comps to, at that end game, he 100%.
Yeah.
But come on, remind us about Corey before we forget about his blurb.
Corey was best known for his showmance with Nicole, his love of Christmas, sleepwalking and talking in his sleep, and for being
Harry
a member
Potter.
of the 8-Pack Alliance. Harry Potter? Harry Potter? Despite being on the outs along with Nicole after Paulie's eviction, they maneuvered through a handful of weeks and made a Final 4 deal with Paul and Victor. However, when Corey became the HOH at the Final 5, both he and Nicole flipped with James to evict Victor for his 3rd and final time. At Final 4, Paul nominated Corey and Nicole, and James obeyed Paul's wish and cast the sole vote to evict Corey. He finished in 4th.
Quick quiz here. Do you remember Corey's BB comic name?
Sleepwalker?
I feel like I can see the artwork, but I cannot remember the
Oh, no,
I'll give you a hint. They shot their wad maybe a couple seasons too early.
I was gonna say something Christmas related.
Corey?
Yeah.
It's not Christmas. It was mistletoe.
Oh yeah, and he had like missiles coming out of his toes. It was so weird.
Yes, for all the that certain crowd of the internet out there that's consistently asking for feed pics, they got it in the form of mistletoe, and also bring in Glenn. Do you remember Glenn's? Oh, actually, I don't think did Glenn. Yes, Glenn got
Was
one.
he a coconut? Was he a coconut of some sort?
No, he was Dr. Groom, which feels like it takes on a completely different context nowadays.
Yeah, that's I don't know if I want to be
How did we end up with both people that were in that final stage of the coconut competition here? Not, it would have been even wilder if they were ending up going against each other again.
And
Not
listen,
quite.
this is again another tie between Corey and Memphis. Is that Corey was mistletoe and Memphis was, of course, iconically Memphist as his BB Comics title. I've just been looking at all the ones that we've talked about. And Jasmine was Sprainiac.
Sprainiac. That's not bad.
I just feel bad. They kind of just. I mean, there were so many things to kind of clown out with Jasmine. They chose remember when you injured yourself on one of our competitions?
Corey Brooks, as I was saying earlier, I feel like is somebody who I think he obviously did well finishing in 4th place, but I do think if he ends up in one of those final 2 chairs, has just as strong of a chance as anybody. I think he is a very social guy, and that has brought him onto more TV appearances than probably anybody remembers. He, at the very least, ended up on an X on the Beach season, and that was him alongside like Morgan Willett. And
that was, I believe he was her ex specifically.
Yeah, and he was somebody who like came onto that season as like, if I'm remembering correctly, like he was like almost an extra to the main cast, where I think Morgan might have been his only ex there. I could be misremembering, but like the way that show works is that like you vote out the exes at certain points and whatnot. And I feel like he wasn't even eligible, and he was just kind of there making friends, living life. He's been an alternate on at least 1, if not 2 seasons of the challenge. He ended up on some like vacation with Derek Kaczynski and Kellyanne. At a certain point, like my early days of covering the challenge, I remember having this news story and these pictures from their trip that they took after being released from being on location of waiting to possibly go into the game. So he was definitely, making his rounds on being possibly on other shows. And now I don't know if you guys get these ads, but Corey's popping up everywhere in all of like the Sears, JCPenney's underwear ads. Like he is showing up all over the place. He's on my TikTok feed like every other month.
I mean, I could see why for a while Corey would have filled that role. I mean, I think Matt, you and I have certainly talked about how ideally we want to see challenge contestants that have athleticism as well as, for lack of a better term, personality. But I think Corey, when he was about to get on the show, kind of resembled that era where sometimes they would just want to put guys that are fit on the show, personality be damned, because Corey, again, was a little bit more blasé. I mean, I think the most interesting thing about him, besides the Christmas stuff, was the story he told about what him and his friends did to the goat that one time. But I think the narrative for Corey, right, was that basically at the mid game, at the Zakia eviction, it was basically like him, Nicole, and Paulie versus the world. He does win that HOH at the first double eviction, and so they're able to turn the tables briefly and get rid of Bridget. But then pretty much from then, it was like he was paired up with Nicole. Nicole seemed to be the one that was really like making the moves to help keep her and Corey safe, but he was winning competitions as well. He ended up winning, as we see here, 2 HOHs and 3 vetoes.
Yeah, Nicole got sunk her claws into him from the get-go. Like right after the Freakazoids lost to Glenn, it was just like the two of them linked up from get-go to get-go. And a lot of it, like, I mean, Nicole, she sort of was like pulling a lot of the strings in terms of like the inner workings of like the APAC and everything. And Corey didn't really need to do much, and neither did really Nicole, because things were just going the way that the both of them wanted it to happen. And like you said, Mike, it didn't really blow up until the whole Zakia situation happens. And of course, you still have that shield in Paulie, and he's the one that takes the brunt of it, like attacking, who was it, James and whoever else, saying like, you better win this next damn HOH. So like, yeah, it was just the whole like... He didn't have to do much. He could just sort of just lay back and be Christmas Corey until it got down to the nitty gritty, and getting that deal with Paul and Victor and then flipping on it, I thought was just great to watch. So I mean, definitely some chops with Corey. I do wonder what he looks like without a Nicole. Is he as good? I don't know. But a decent player.
I would imagine he sort of falls into the situation where like he bros down with like-minded people early on and just kind of has them guide his game. I think that's the tough thing, is that it's kind of tough to divorce. Like, did he really have a line of independent thinking in Big Brother 18? I would argue the one that came closest was he was the last recipient of America's Care Package, which maybe also shows like his popularity at the time. Was that the rule with America's Care Package, if you remember, was like once you got it once, you couldn't get it again. And so like you had maybe some of the more well-regarded contestants get it early on, and Corey was the last one to get it. Though again, it still boggles my mind that neither Victor nor Paul got it at all, considering that they were personified as like the big underdogs, and Victor goes on to win America's Favorite House Guest. But Corey gets the BB bribe straight out of the gold bars that April had in BB10. He basically had money that he could use free-handedly to bribe anybody. And it was a little bit of a nothing burger. I think he like bribes Victor to vote out Big Meech when she was already going anyway. But outside of that, it's tough for me to think of like anything he did on his own outside of that one time that Nicole and Paul were arguing in the kitchen, and he comes out of the DR to shed his costume in the moment.
Woo! It's like, oh, you guys fighting? Are you guys fighting? That's literally what his game with Nicole was like. It was like she was over here like doing everything, and he's just like la-di-da-di-da. Like,
I feel like he's somewhat comparable, and I even just said his name by accident. I meant to say Corey, I said Cody. And just like standard blandness, likability, like is kind of the vibe here. Like he definitely is more of a social player than I think he may get remembered for. Again, is a very likable person. When you're living with him, kind of vibe. But like as far as one of you guys were just saying, controlling like his own strategic game, and like if he were to play again, how much power would he have over, like, because if he was, for example, on a BB22, he would have been right at the core of that committee alliance with, whoever else he's taking the place of there, but with everybody else there.
And he might have been one of the compies because like Corey was a baseball player, right, in college. And like he clearly keeps in very good shape as well. And so I think he'd be able, like Cody might have been his closest competition in terms of these physical competitions.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, recently announced going to be a dad, and I feel like he's somebody that strikes me as Mr. Dad jokes, so like that seems pretty fitting for him.
I'm just glad he's a fellow Christmas lover, so I'm just excited to see what he does being a father and being both a Christmas lover. Like make those Christmases magical, buddy. I'm here for it.
Let us find out who our final player of the episode is going to be. Corey's competition for this matchup.
This is going to be interesting.
Got a pretty steady player, but could there be a more powerful player? Could we get our BB Cam legend?
Oh, is it? I can't see it.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Dipping our toes, not into the BB can world, unfortunately for me and my wishes here, but we are getting out of the BB US proper franchise and going over to some BB celeb.
I'm really excited to talk about this one because if I recall correctly, Jonathan Bennett might be one of the most screwed players in Celebrity Big Brother history.
Go further. I mean,
oh yeah, sure. So I mean, I'm not gonna read the blurb, but if I'm remembering correctly, the first week of Celebrity Big Brother 2 was a shit show where basically what happened was that I think it was who was it that won HOH? It was maybe
Ryan.
Yeah, it was Ryan Lochte.
Well, yeah, it was his best friend in the house at that moment in time.
But then it was Ryan.
They were
and
in
Jonathan.
a duo.
They were in a duo. It was one of those things where it was a pair that made it to the last stage of the HOH competition, and then they competed alongside each other. But if you didn't win, then you automatically became a nominee.
Yes.
And so Jonathan was up against Tom Green and the Mooch. Except it turns out that the Mooch, first off, there was like an initial veto that Ricky Williams won, and he didn't use it. And so Jonathan's like, great, I'm up against Tom, who is already starting to like bristle against people, and the Mooch, who like everyone's kind of creeped out by. Except it turns out the Mooch was a quote unquote fake house guest. So he was automatically disqualified. So then Ryan had to nominate another person. He nominated Candy Burris. Then there was another veto, which previous mentioned house guest Kato Kalin ends up winning. He saves his new buddy, Tom Green. And so in the process, Ryan nominates Joey Lawrence. And so Jonathan starts the week as like the lowest option out of the three, and then ends up by default the highest option and ends up getting voted out because of that.
Yeah. Amon, is there anything in the blurb we didn't get to already?
No, that's kind of it. After winning the initial power pair comp, Jonathan was nominated after losing to Ryan in the first HOH comp. After pitching an alliance to the women of the house, Jonathan decided to influence Ryan's nominations and nominate Tom instead of Dina. After a downward spiral, Jonathan and his allies were shocked when he was the first celebrity evicted from the house. Yeah, so definitely not the greatest twist. I remember feeling annoyed that there was like a power pair competition, but then the loser of the power pair gets it. Didn't make sense. Like, if you're a power pair, then you winning should be me winning as well. Like, why am I having to be on the block because I lost to my pair? Doesn't make sense.
I remember seeing pictures of Jonathan Bennett with, go with me here, Marissa Jarrett Winokur, Caitlin Herman, Morgan Willett, and any other people that might have been in that picture that I forget about, because this is the time that Caitlin and Morgan are doing their podcast together. They're out in LA, I think. Marissa's out there with Ross, still doing some stuff like post BB Celeb 1. Like, they were doing some things together, including that BB20 after show, which is when they met Caitlin, I think. And like, I don't know if like some friendship got formed or whatever, but I remember seeing a picture where I guess all of them had been out at one point and we're like, what is Jonathan Bennett doing with that group? I wonder if this upcoming season of Celebrity Big Brother will have anything to do with him.
Oh, Aaron Samuels, is he a Big Brother fan?
Yeah, surprising nobody that, you know, I guess was paying attention.
Katie Heron's mom on the cast. Oh my god,
that too. He shows up on this cast. Dina Lohan as well there, and it's like, does Dina Lohan know who this man is? No, I mean, sure, remind her that he was a character in a brief character in, you know, one of her daughters.
You gotta do Dina like that.
I'm reading his interview with me.
Do a drink, Grandma.
He directly told me in his interview with me, I don't regret what I did for Dina Lohan. It's the right thing to do, and I would 100% do it again. That's Lindsay's mom. If your friend's mom who you grew up with played Big Brother against you, you don't put her on the block. That makes you a bad person.
He was in the house being like, Lindsay would get so mad at me.
Yes, I remember. I forgot about that.
He was like, I cannot get out of here and have Lindsay be mad at me.
Oh, and I'm remembering that, like, apparently Lolo Jones got complete surprise here, got incredibly jealous and petty over the fact that Jonathan was getting close to her fellow Olympian and Ryan Lochte, to the point where she actually flipped off both of them in the memory wall photo.
She did do that, yes.
She is like, so unhinged. Oh,
Jonathan Bennett should have shown up to this game, and I definitely had him in my top 3 of, you know, possible winners. He should have had the abilities to go far, the somewhat super fan knowledge to go far. He was definitely, maybe not definitely, Tamar was a big fan too. Top 3 of like the biggest super fans on the cast. And just like, I don't know, there was no reason for him to go out the way that he did. Mike just explained all of the things that went wrong to get him to the point of where he was, to being the first boot on this season. I was so shocked that this went down the way that it did.
Yeah, I remember being very, very upset about it as well. You know, me being a Mean Girls aficionado, it just was not aligning with my fantasy at all. But there really wasn't much to be done about it. So it's like, this is like a double whammy of a bell curve, because like we already sort of like, you know, given the fact that Celebrity Big Brother is not the same as Big Brother proper, and then on top of that, you're getting screwed by a twist that is just like, you know, BS.
Yeah. Not only that, a series of twists that were BS. That it was like, again, I'm pretty sure, because I remember Tom and Kato were pretty much outsiders at that point, that even when the Mooch thing happened, they still said, okay, well, we're going to get rid of Tom now at this point. So had Kato win the veto and taken Tom off the block, that was like the only outcome where Jonathan was going to go. And even from that perspective, it was basically like only because he was up against one of the fellow members of his alliance in Candy, where again, he thought that this Mean Girls alliance, in a manner of speaking, of him and Lolo and Tamar and what was her name? Natalie. Eva Marie. Yeah. Like, that they were all going to vote to keep him, but they all end up blindsiding him.
Yeah. He definitely thought he was staying. But as the week went on, I remember them just being like, this guy is too smart. He's too all over the place. He's made too many deals with too many people, and we were all aware of it. And it was just, you know, a combination of the screwed factor of the game mechanics and all that kind of stuff, combined with him just being generally messier than I ever would have anticipated. That led him to, again, being the first boot there. I could see a world where, you know, if he were to play again, it would go a lot better. I think it, you know, absolutely could have gone the way that at least I thought it was going to go, of him being a contender to win the whole thing. Because, you know, I don't know. We saw, maybe, not that I know like the full side of all these actors, especially like like actors, I feel like when they come into the house, you're like, oh, I kind of know what to expect. And maybe for like the housewives, you've seen them on, you know, more of a real human level on their respective shows. But like, I'm like, I don't know, unless I've seen you in interviews, I don't know what to expect. I just had this perception of him that he was going to be this like perfectly made for the game, and I could still see that happening. I don't know. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but
I mean, we, you know, when the cast got announced, we did like, you know, we did the usual digging, and we had found that he had been interacting with a lot of like old tweets from old seasons, and like he was clearly a big fan of the game.
I think him and Tamar were far and away the two biggest fans of the show.
Yeah.
Yep.
How dare you? Joey Lawrence would like a word. Just kidding.
Would he say whoa in response to that?
He would.
I remember seeing him actually, Jonathan, that is, not Joey. Like while the season was still airing, because I had a wedding in LA actually that during that time, and we were downtown. I was walking with some friends, and then somebody, like one of my friends, like nudges me. He's like, "I'm on." I was like, "What happened?" He's like, "Look over there." And like it was so funny though, because the thing that I associated first was not Mean Girls. It was Celebrity Big Brother. Like he wasn't Aaron Samuels to me anymore. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be that guy, obviously. But it was kind of trippy, like seeing him like get evicted like 3 weeks ago, and then he's just out and about. It was weird, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I feel like there could have been potential there, but it was, out of what we did see, not the greatest showing. Interesting like matchup here, where I was just talking about how Corey pops up in a lot of ads for me on various social medias. So does Jonathan. Him and his now husband James, James Vaughn, I think is his last name, from Amazing Race and various other like hosting gigs.
Oh, he was one of the Chippendales? That James?
That James, yeah.
Oh.
He is married to James. And the two of them do a lot of also social media promo stuff, and they both end up on a lot of my
including accidentally flashing us with the reflection of a wine glass. Have you guys not seen
was them?
What? That was
Jonathan?
Was that Jonathan? I forgot about that.
He was out in his backyard. For those of you listeners of the podcast that don't know, he was out in his backyard some summer. I don't remember what year it was recently. And he was taking a picture of like a drink that he had. But in the reflection, you could see his entire body lounging on the chair, full frontal.
Oh my God.
Among the amount of people that just pause this podcast to go
look for that. I'm sure you'll find it. You will
driving traffic away.
Is that now representative of his game, that like only through a very specific angle does he get caught with his pants down?
Yeah,
honestly.
Well, this is a really,
the nail on the head.
I mean, this is a really interesting matchup, though, in my opinion, because it's like this dichotomy of here is a player that honestly didn't do that much, but made it very far in the game, versus someone who flamed out incredibly quickly, but has a little bit of potential in an ordinary season when it comes to being a player.
With that all
said, I feel like a lot of people were
using
him as a means to say this is why you shouldn't cast super fans for the show. But again, like as we just stated, I think that there was like a lot that had to happen for him to be in the predicament that he ended up in. I don't think that it's necessarily so much of a skill thing. Some of it could be. I don't necessarily know if he was. I mean, at the end of the day, they did vote him out because they did feel like he was a little bit too all over the place. So I do think there is like something to be said about maybe tempering yourself, maybe realizing that you're getting screwed hardcore by multiple twists, so that you're gonna have to adapt in some way, form or fashion, in order to potentially get out of it. But it is sort of like a very, very hard mountain to climb for him. So
on that superfan scale that Mike was just talking about, you said it was him and Tamar. Look at both ends of the season.
Yeah.
Yep.
Neither can live while the other survives.
In the winter, exactly. But I mean, looking at the matchups that we've had, you know, it's a low bar for this, for what I'm about to say, just like the other matchups being somewhat of slam dunks. This is probably the most even, and I'm not sure, you know, how even. I want to hear what you guys have to say, of course, but compared to the other two matchups, there's more room for discussion here. Mike, where are you feeling? What are you thinking?
This is so strange. And again, this is going back to me going back on my preseason claims here. Like, I might go Jonathan. Just because like it's not like in 100 seasons who would do better than who, because I still think, again, Corey is somebody who, unless you are really gunning for big physical threats, like he'll almost always survive at least to the mid game, unless you have like a Karen Stingbale come in and be like, anyone who has muscles, you're going on the block immediately. Like maybe Corey would have been a first boot. Actually, knowing how Canada voted for like their favorite house guest, Corey would have absolutely won America's maybe favorite house guest for Big Brother 18 if Victor wasn't around. Of like,
Yeah.
Corey had you know what, that's it. Corey had a lot of Todd from BB Can 12 energy to him of just like pretty, down to earth personality that got linked with a much bigger persona. And as a result, ends up getting brought to the end where he ends up getting taken out as the bigger threat at the final four from a physical perspective. But there's also something to me of like the appeal of how much flukiness was behind Jonathan's boot and the fact that like he was only on the block in the first place because of game design. Like if I don't think if there's no rule that whoever is paired up with the HOH gets automatically nominated, I don't think he's nominated because the people who voted him out weren't in the ear of Ryan Lochte to be like, oh, well, you should nominate Jonathan. He's doing too much. And even if that's the case, I don't think Ryan Lochte's the guy to be like, yup, you know what? You're too big of a threat. I got to take you out. Because it wasn't like the narrative after that, even that like all of Jonathan's closest allies, including Joey, including Ryan, just get taken out back to back. So there's just something about that interesting potential to me that I'm having a tough time weighing against more than I would usually think. The fact that we did see 90 something days of Corey and they were fairly impressive, but altogether nothing incredibly to write home about.
I'm kind of like, because I agree with everything you just said, and I'm also thinking about Corey in terms of like, because he obviously was able to win comps, so he's got that part of his game going for him, and then on top of that, he is a generally likable person, and even with the whole Nicole thing going on for him, I remember, distinctly everyone always sort of like having things to say about Nicole and Corey, like, well, we gotta get him out, we gotta get him out of here, but there was also everything going on with Zakia and Pauly, and then there was whatever was going on between Natalie and James. So in a house where there are other showmances, for you to have the showmance that has the lowest profile, I guess, there's something to be said about that. So I'm like, you got your showmance points, you got your physical comp points, you got your generally likable points. That to me sounds like someone who is destined for deep game all the time. And so I'm kind of like, oh, Jonathan, what do you do? I don't know, because I also feel like he just got screwed so bad.
I feel like I should jump in here because you guys are having a harder time with this than I am. My decision's a little bit easier. I feel like I got to go Corey, and it's like we were saying, it's closer here, and I can see where the hard decision making kind of comes in. Jonathan being screwed with the game mechanics and all of that and whatnot, but just my memories of him again in his brief time, which is kind of all we can go off of as far as him within the context of playing Big Brother. He spread himself way too thin and people were onto him super fast. I don't think that he was connecting with people
but
well
he had
enough
to do that though because of all the shit that he was going through. So I'm like,
look, I mean, some people face adversity day one and some people face it on day 40. It comes up when it comes up, but to succeed in Big Brother, you gotta, I mean, I know Corey faced it on day one as well, in a different style, and he just had to win a competition to get his way. But I do think, if he was faced in that kind of scenario that Jonathan was faced in, I think Corey gets out of that much cleaner than Jonathan 9 out of 10 times.
And Corey's not looked at as like the liar in a lot of these deals. Like,
yeah, he's not the snake. Michelle isn't drawing a picture of him at jury. I'll shake it up a little bit. I'll vote Jonathan. Why the fuck not? I want to acknowledge the fact
Mike wanted chaos.
I wanted chaos. I want to acknowledge the fact that he was screwed in a massive way. And look, he does talk Ryan Lochte into not nominating Dina Lohan. Like, that is a more visually impressive move to me than anything that Corey did. Now, granted, did he have to do that stuff? No, but that's also because Jonathan was also forced to be nominated on day one, which, as he spoke about to me, completely changes the way that he approaches things. So I am probably believing that I'm going to be outvoted here 2-1, but I'm going to throw a bone here to Jonathan, who I do feel like, again, was massively boned by a series of unfortunate events.
Hey, man. You know, if there's one thing Amon likes, it's decision
I know.
making.
That's why I wanted to do
Has
it.
anybody ever watched an RHAP draft before?
All right, we have another 15 minutes here.
Oh
Let's just
my
sit.
Yeah.
God. You know what? I swear to God, during BB27, I'm going to have all of my picks and I'm going to say them immediately as soon as Rob says, all right, Amon, your turn. I'm going to just say the name. Because I am tired of y'all.
Yeah. Okay. Sure you will. We have one vote Corey, one vote Jonathan, and Amon will be breaking the tie here.
I feel like I've been swayed. And now...
Look, this is not a
I
vote we're
don't
talking about like
know.
legacy versus anything. These are two people that have nothing, like no impact on the broad Big Brother picture.
Exactly. And you know what? I think he looks sexy with his hair pushed back. So therefore, and I feel like, and I know that we should not base our votes off of this, but I think that there's a possibility that Corey could win a battle back. So I'm also going to go Jonathan here.
There we go, baby. Yes.
This is wild.
Yes.
I would say through several episodes so far, you're welcome, Mike. This is the one that I am walking away from like, I don't even know what to do with this. Like,
look,
we all get a vote. Look, you're all entitled to your votes.
He was saying all of the right things. He was saying all of the right things during his preseason, and it made all of us feel pretty good about his game. He was like one of the number one draft picks for everybody. And I just think that without all of that frantic energy, I think there's a world in which he does very, very well. If somebody like Tamar Braxton can win Celebrity Big Brother, there is no reason that Jonathan Bennett cannot also win Celebrity Big Brother 2. There's just no reason for it. And so I just think, especially for that particular season, if he was not screwed into being nominated with all the chaos that happened in that season, I do not think that he's the main contributor. I think it is Lolo Jones and Kato Kalin and Tamar Braxton, okay? And he can just sort of just like be above the fray, okay? So that's where I'm going. I think that Corey played a great game in BB18. I think that most of it was governed by people like Polly and people like Nicole and to some extent Frank and Davon while they were there in the beginning. And outside of that, outside of winning comps, not always necessarily when he needed to, his game is fine. So I feel good about putting someone like Jonathan over a game that is fine.
You sure this has nothing to do with the wine glass?
I think it has everything to do with the wine glass.
Wow.
And I'm grateful for it, baby.
Is it pulled up on another screen or something?
I feel like I'm I'm Angela after the Lisa eviction. I'm just like, I'm stunned that this vote went my way, and I'm thanking all of you in this big, awkward public speech.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. We have to round up from this episode. Our first matchup of the day was Glenn Garcia being evicted, or BB18 Night 2 boot, being evicted over two-time player Memphis Garrett, runner-up, 5th place finisher from BB All-Stars season 22. We had evicted from BB3 our second boot, Tonya, who is no longer in the running here. Jasmine from Big Brother 24. Jasmine Davis goes forward to round 2. And in a wild last matchup of the night, we had Big Brother 18's Corey Brooks be evicted from the bracket in favor
I feel like they
of
won't come for Mike.
Celebrity Big Brother 2 first boot, Jonathan Bennett.
Yeah.
Going on to round 2 at the votes of Mike Bloom and Amon Adwin. If I could not make that any clearer.
Matt, this is my revenge for Gavin over Lauren.
You got both. You still got David. I was about to sit there and be like, no David.
There we go. No, this
anyway.
is great. I love this is what I came for, and thank you. This is fantastic. This was so much fun as well. We got to talk about 3 first and second boots as well, which is fun. I think also from your perspective, it's also, I would imagine there's a group of like these early boots that all come and become these slam dunk wins. So I'm happy that we're able to burn through those as well for your sake. And yeah, get surprised by a couple of them.
Not here. I don't know. I mean, I'll have to double check and maybe I'll get back to everybody by the next time we talk, but like, earliest evictees to go forward to round 2. Like, I mean, I don't think we have any first boots yet. Amon can't even look at us.
I'm trying to look. Yeah, I
Just thinking
don't.
about what we just did.
Yeah.
The look of regret.
Oh God,
Yes.
Look,
I don't regret it, but I'm
to
also
your
like,
credits, we talked about this with the last episode with Jack. It's like, who's coming out here, swinging for us about what happened to Jack in the bracket. Jack's out. Is anyone coming out to the defense of Corey saying, you guys stink, you got rid of? I don't think so. They may say you're out of your minds, but we all knew that about Mike Bloom already. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that, like, if it comes, I'm welcome to it. I think for me it was a balance of getting to explore somebody who had basically a chance going to the end of the game and did some solid stuff, but nothing like incredibly expressive to me, versus somebody that did a lot in that first week and was mostly due to the fact that production screwed him over multiple times. And like, again, maybe it's that appeal to me of what makes me pop more, and the appeal of like a potential from Jonathan maybe excites me more than the reality of a Corey Brooks. But I'm also very happy to be wrong here and just have partially a stamp on this bracket by having Jonathan Bennett make the second round.
you know what this is,
look,
and this is
again,
this is
I think there's still a chance that Corey can make it. So, like, I'm just saying.
yeah. All the
He's not
Corey
out of the
Brooks
woods
fans are
yet.
going to come out in droves.
I mean, Jonathan Bennett, could he
give his battle
arguably
back
be
up.
the Jelinski of Big Brother, in that he flamed out as a first boot and
Mike,
has his legacy there.
To bring us full circle here, back in the day, we recorded a podcast called The Choir Room. And one of the episodes that you joined us for was an episode called The Puppet Master, where a lot of strange gas was leaked into the choir room for the Glee Club, and things got weird. Things happened. I think that's where we ended up today. I think that some gas has leaked into the diary room. It's affected the two of you. I'm good. And
Well, and again, this is a nice reversal from when we talked about that episode and you gave it 5
exactly.
stars.
I said that was a perfect episode of Glee. You both were on the out, or I don't remember. Amon might have not been.
No,
all the way
we
on the
were
other
both
end.
pretty apoplectic about
Well,
it, if I remember
we were,
correctly.
at least you and I were on complete opposite ends. I think Amon might have been talked down like a half a slushy or something like that based on my argument. But now here we have the complete reverse. So again, full circle. So there's your plug for the choir room. Go check it out.
My
Yeah,
revenge.
This is what you missed out on with me last week. I come in with this energy, and I'm excited to
Love
do it again when it's gonna be like Rachel Riley versus I don't know. I'm trying to think versus Dominique from season 19.
And you're
Yeah.
gonna send Rachel home right away. I mean, honestly, that could be a competition where I don't know. But aside from all of that, there's our matchups. We had fun. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Oh my God, the pleasure was
Yes.
all mine. Again, I've said this offline as well. Like, this is such a great concept, and you guys have committed yourself to like this long enduring process, but like it doesn't even feel like work getting to do this. Again, this feels
Mhm.
so effortless on your parts, getting to just talk about your
Mhm.
love for the show and how it manifests in these players. And I love how it also manifests in these incredibly wonky results. And I cannot wait to see how this is going. You've already done what? So this is you've gone through 42 players so far, basically. So
Mhm.
just a drop in the bucket, but already I think the concept has proved itself, and I think you guys should be really proud of what you've created thus far.
Oh, thank you, Mike. We've been having a lot of
Thank
fun.
you.
It's been so much fun to get to bring on people that we don't generally get to podcast with in general.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't quite fall into that category, at least for probably for both of us. But to get to talk to some people that we wouldn't otherwise and just talk Big Brother for an hour and a half. And it doesn't always have to be about the current season. So of course, this will extend beyond the BB26 and beyond BB27, and
Oh
we'll
my
have a
gosh.
lot of fun. So that's that. Mike, of course, I would imagine that 99.99% of people that are listening to this know where to find you, but for that 0.01%, let them know.
Yeah, so of course you can follow everything I'm doing at a Mike Bloom type, unless you have complaints about us putting on Jonathan over Corey, in which case my is at Matt Ligori on
my
Twitter. You can also find me on Cameo. But yeah, the big thing is that I am so fortunate to be a member of Big Brother Press, where I am talking with these house guests the day after they are evicted. At the time this is being released, I will have spoken with the third person to be evicted from the house, moving on to the fourth as we make our way through the pre-jury of Big Brother 26. And then with the Survivor stuff, I've spoken about it a bunch, but over this summer, I went on my own little sojourn here and did a project called the Survivor 50 Wish List, where, as we know, Survivor 50 is going to be a big returning season. And so I went season by season to try to figure out who could and should come back for season 50. We talked about each season, each podcast, and came out with a short list of players that either we'd want to see back, would probably get the call back depending on what the theme was. Both of these lovely gentlemen have appeared on the podcast. Amon appeared during season 24. One World,
His
Matt.
favorite season.
Exactly. And Matt appeared during season 38. I'm doing the Summer of Survivor, which is an off-season series happening on Wednesday nights with myself, Rob, and Shannon Gus. Also, Survivor 40 Several is right around the corner, including a face that is very familiar to the three of us. I got the chance to talk with them all in the preseason, so whenever the cast drops, I'll be dropping my interviews with all 18 players there. Last, but certainly not least, I get to talk scripted TV every week on a podcast called TV for Real, where it's myself and Sasha Joseph and a reality TV contestant talking scripted TV. Because unless we're listening to it randomly on the feeds, I feel like we rarely get their tastes in scripted television, in which we all have those tastes. From a Big Brother perspective, in the past, we've had Rachel Riley on, we've had Corey Wurtenberger on, and actually, we'll be talking with another BB25 cast member this week. Izzy is going to be joining us to talk about, really basically everything under the sun. This will be more of a topic to talk about her general TV tastes in the past, present, and future. And so that should be a lot of fun. And I'm sure much, much more to come. Trying to maybe do some Big Brother podcasting stuff as well over the course of season 26. But again, pay attention to me on social media, and I'll be sure to pimp out all that stuff when it comes. And thank you so much for having me on again.
Anytime. And Mike, you'll be back. We will like, if not for, I feel like we're going to get to a point where the end of this wheel is like all BB can. And those of our guests who have watched the BB can are
there are dozens of us.
Or you be getting some calls and texts coming your way to say, hey, you want to pop back on? We got still 30 more players to go. They're all BB can. But yes, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so much fun. I'm glad we could end in true chaos as only you would ever allow. Amon, tell everybody what's going on over on Patreon.
Yes, so we did launch our Patreon this past week.
Woo!
Thank you to those that have already signed on and subscribed at whatever level you can. We really, really appreciate the support. We would love to have the subscriptions to keep on coming in. We've already got a couple of extra bits of content for you to check out. We are doing the losers bracket, as Matt mentioned before, as well as early access to episodes before they get released to the public. So if you're already signed up, you're going to be hearing Mike a lot more before some of the other people will. So if that interests you to be on the exclusive tip, then come on over to Patreon, and we were going to continue to just bank as many episodes in there as possible. And we really appreciate the support thus far. It's been very, very encouraging. So thanks, guys.
These battleback votes are going to get intense. Some people that sign up are going to have up to 25 votes per battleback.
And you don't want the wrong people to have too many battleback points, do you? Okay, you don't want to get outvoted. You don't want to get disenfranchised. So
you use your votes however you want to. If you want to use those when the time comes for Glenn Garcia, for Tonya, for Corey Brooks, because Amon thinks that Corey's getting this bump. He thinks that Corey is coming in hot to the battleback. So you'll be the judges of that. So that is patreon.com/thediaryroom. If you would like to join us for that journey, again, is so appreciated for you just to be supporting the podcast, but also getting all this extra content. Hopefully it makes it worth your while. We're on Twitter at Diary Room PCast. Amon's at Amon Adwin. I'm at Matt Ligori. We're both popping in and out of Big Brother 26 coverage all summer long. And other than that, of course, for me, check out the Free Agents podcast. We've had Mike on a bunch lately for various challenge topics and projects and whatnot.
And I believe the day this is coming out will be the day before, finally, the premiere of the Challenge 40 Battle of the Eras.
Yeah. Challenge 40 about to be in full swing, or maybe already is. So crazy stuff going on over there. Check out the Free Agents podcast for all your challenge coverage. We'll be there for 2 episodes a week. One is on Patreon, but we have a lot of fun over there. And Amon's in the off season of Drag Race, but like I said, BB26 is in full swing. And I don't know, maybe you'll check in on Global. You guys were thinking about it, but who knows?
No word on that yet.
Are you watching Canada versus the World, Amon?
I am not, only because I still haven't seen the first one. I already know who wins the first one, and I need to watch it because I love that person who wins the first one. So I want to watch the journey.
I haven't seen the first one, and I haven't seen Canada seasons 2 through 4. I freaking love this season of Canada versus the World. Like I think you can come in without context, honestly, and I think especially after All Stars 9, we've been jonesing to have some eliminations and some drama, and this season brings it in multiple ways so far.
Okay, all right, I'll check it out then. Okay.
There's the pitch. All right. Well, we got a lot of things for you guys to check out between the drag race of it all these other podcasts, all these places to follow us. So thank you again to Mike for joining us here today. We will be back next week with another great guest and 6 more players to pull. We'll see if it's as chaotic as these past couple of weeks have been. But until then, Amon closes the show. I'm so sorry. Get us out of here.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for the support. And until then, please go to the diary room.